We're up here on top of Mount Marcy, just waiting for the sun to rise. Day 2 of the Northville Blasted Trail is in the books. Well, life doesn't get much better than this open ridge walk on Jay Mountain, and we're at the summit of Lower Wolfjaw, our 8th high peak of the day here on the Great Range Traverse. Well, it's 4:30 a.m., heading a big slide today, and it's -4 degrees here at the parking lot. Bushwhacking our way up Green Mountain, and I have to say, the trees are winning this fight today. Well, the sun is shining and the wind is whipping here up on Haystack. Next stop, Saddleback Cliffs. Cock-a-doodle-doo from the summit of Roostercombe. Scarface might be the most underrated hike in the entire park. 60-mile-an-hour winds up on Hurricane. Very fitting, cruising up the Bald Rock slab here on Bald Mountain. Standing up here on the summit of Catamount Mountain, Iroquois, Mount Van Hovenberg, Skylight, Santanoni. You're listening to the 46 of 46 podcast. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And no, I'm not talking about Christmas time, even though that is a pretty great time with the Christmas vibes and the smells and the Christmas trees, the holiday activities. No, I'm talking about summertime in the Adirondacks, which has its own assortment of vibes, smells, and activities such as perfect sunny bluebird days and the mid-70s temperatures with no humidity, the smells of the spruce and pine trees everywhere, the gentle breeze blowing through the evergreen giants, the blue sky above the green trees with the blue lakes below and the sparkle off of the water, the sounds of the rivers flowing off the mountains, and let's not forget about the crackling sounds from the campfire and that smoky aroma that fills the cool night air around your campsite. Summertime in the ADK. It truly is hard to beat. For those of you who know me personally, the summertime tends to be a time of year that I'm on the road for work for a large portion of the season, unfortunately. And each year my family tries to figure out a good place to go for a summer vacation getaway. And well, like every summer when we try deciding where to go and what to do, I always think to myself, why would I want to go anywhere? Summer is the time to come to the Adirondacks. We're already here. So with that in mind, we decided to spend our vacation week right here inside the blue line and have our own fun at home in the Adirondacks. The Appleton Adirondack Staycation. An idea so grand it deserved its own episode here on the 46 of 46 podcast. Why, you ask? Well, because this podcast has 2 criteria for episodes. It has to revolve around the Adirondacks, or it has to take place in the great outdoors. And fortunately for you, this staycation has both. So buckle up and come on vacation as I visit different sections of the Adirondack Park, exploring places we've never been, places we haven't been in a long time, or places that we've talked about going to for a long time. Days filled with history, museums, farms, water parks, high peaks, and a whole lot of soft-serve ice cream. It's time to experience all the great things the ADK has to offer. Let's go! Day 1, Sunday, July 10th. We weren't wasting any time to get this Appleton family ADK staycation underway, and I replaced myself for the entire week on the TV series that I've been working on all summer, so we had 1 full week to explore the park and make the most of our time. So Sunday, it was a flawless, sunny, 80-degree day, and we were off to the northern tier of the park. Now, I should state, this day actually took us to the very first town technically outside the blue line, that being the town of Malone. My wife and my oldest daughter, June, have been reading through the Laura Ingalls Wilder book series, and if you're not familiar, you probably are familiar with the TV show based off one of the books from that series, that being The Little House on the Prairie. Well, Laura Ingalls, the author and main character of the series, married a man named Almanzo Wilder, hence the last name, Wilder. And in this wildly popular and famous Little House book series, one of those books, entitled Farmer Boy, retells her husband's story as a 9-year-old on his family farm. And that family farm was in Malone, New York, just outside the Blue Line, where his family lived in the 19th century. The farm has a mix of original buildings as well as barns and other buildings that have been rebuilt to reflect the exact time period of how the farm looked during the Wilders' years there, along with tons of period farming tools that the Wilders would have used, carriages, and tons of photographs. It really was an awesome experience for history fans and my daughter and my wife, who loved every second of seeing the exact places that they read about in the Farmer Boy book. The story truly came alive that day, complete with a picnic lunch on the picnic tables. And after we enjoyed our tour and time exploring this historic farm, it was time to head back home. One of those beloved "now entering the Adirondack Park" signs is located on the town line of Malone, so again, this day took us just outside the Blue Line technically, but we'll let it slide. However, as we drove back down Route 30 through the Adirondack Park, through Duane, past Keys Mill Road to Paul Smith's College, where of course we passed the hot dog stand guy who's been set up next to Paul Smith's College every summer for, basically forever. We then turned left and headed back towards Lake Placid onto Route 86, where we stopped in Lake Clear at none other than the world's greatest soft-serve ice cream that has ever been created. The one, the only, Donnelly's Ice Cream. Can I get an amen from all of you listening right now? It's okay, say it out loud. Amen. All right, so for all you listeners who aren't aware, Donnelly's is a seasonal soft-serve stand on the side of the road. It's only open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and in my opinion, it's probably the only food establishment that I could actually see being on a Food Network show one day due to its notoriety in the area and the fact that its product is far superior from everyone else on the planet. And they have a bit of a quirky business, if you will. They offer one flavor a day. Yup, one flavor. Always twisted with vanilla. Mostly always twisted with vanilla. And they even have a sign, albeit a slightly aggressive sign in fact, stating, "Choose your size, the flavor has already been chosen for you." So you go in the small shack, choose your size, cone or dish, and that is it. It's almost comical really, but the ice cream is so good and it's unique that year after year you just kind of put up with the quirks of the business because the product, again, is beyond good. And it's on a dairy farm, so that helps an ice cream stand. And they seem to only hire high school girls from the Saranac Lake area summer after summer, and it's kind of like a rite of passage for many girls in Saranac Lake, I've been told, to work a summer at Donnelly's Ice Cream. And there's a joke between Josh and I, you all remember Josh from the podcast, that it's hard to determine what's colder, the ice cream or the employees that work at Donnelly's. Zing! Yeah, I said it. They're not the friendliest staff you'll ever run into. But it's all part of the Donnelly's experience. They're kind of like the Soup Nazi, but, for ice cream for all you Seinfeld fans out there. And now the reason their ice cream is so freaking good and uniquely creamy is because the ice cream machine that they use is from, I believe, the 1940s. And I find most soft-serve ice cream to basically all taste the same, no matter where it's from, except Donnelly's. Theirs is different, and it's thanks to this glorious ice cream machine. And it is worth the drive out to Lake Clear. Trust me. Cash only, though. Don't even think about trying to use a card. They will not accept. They'll just point your eyes to read the handwritten cash-only sign attached to the counter. Yes, I kid about the quirkiness of the business, but, trust me when I say that their product is really good if you haven't been. And if you have been, you either know exactly what I'm talking about or you're cursing my name because this becomes a hot debate here in the ADK. The ice cream melts really quickly, so also, be ready to eat. But you can also enjoy some nice views of the backside of Moose Mountain and Mackenzie Mountain and Catamount from the parking lot, so that's always good. All in all, day one was a successful start to the ADK Staycation. On to day two. Day two, Monday, July 11th. After a successful day one driving to and through the northern tip of the park, now it was time to drive to the southeastern tip of the Adirondack Park, all the way to Lake George. And while we researched what we wanted to do and where we wanted to go, we came across something we never knew existed. And that is the Lake George Expedition Park, the home of the Magic Forest Family Theme Park and Dino Roar Valley. Basically a real-life Jurassic Park style park. Minus the whole being eaten alive off of a toilet by a T-Rex or by a pack of velociraptors, of course. We weren't aware of this park, but I'm glad that we found it. It brands itself as a family theme park, and I think that's exactly what it is for all you people with kids out there. It is a low-key theme park with plenty of rides that the kids will enjoy, and my kids are 7 and 3, so they had the time of their life. Personally, I'd recommend it for ages, like 3 to 10, kind of in that ballpark. But the older kids may need a little more adventure in their rides, which you can go right down the street to the Great Escape for that. But overall, we had a great time exploring this family theme park for the very first time. And I also learned something about myself. Let me tell you a little story about the Tilt-A-Whirl. Once upon a time, I was a young lad, and I loved all the rides at the Great Escapes and the Six Flags and the Disney, the roller coasters, the upside downs, 1,000,000 feet in the air rides, those giant pirate ship swings that swing you back and forth and you kind of float out of your seat as you get to the top 100 feet in the air. I loved them all, couldn't get enough of them. But apparently, I have entered the age where I can't do these fast rides anymore without just wanting to die. When did I pass that age threshold of, I guess I'm too soft to handle these rides now? It was quite disappointing. Meanwhile, my quiet, soft-spoken little 7-year-old Princess June has a wild side, and apparently she could not get enough of these fast rides throughout the week. Who knew? Let's just say that while we were on the Tilt-A-Whirl in particular, June, myself, and the other riders on the Tilt-A-Whirl should be really glad that I did not have any food in my stomach. Because if I had, I can assure you, they all would have been wearing it. Yup. My stomach was absolutely destroyed after we got off the ride. Hilarious, but also really sad. But seriously, if there was anything in my stomach, it would have come out on that ride. And I felt just awful for the next probably 2 hours. Anyways, we enjoyed a magic show, and then we ventured down to the real highlight of the day at this business, Dino Roar Valley. To me, this was the amazing part of this park. They have seemingly real-life-size dinosaurs, what I would assume to be real-life-size, and they move, and you can learn all about them on this cool walk. It's really awesome. And when I say life-size, I mean life-size. T-Rex, Triceratops, Brontosaurus, Titanosaurus. It was actually pretty bonkers, in my opinion. But you'll have to experience it for yourself. It's basically a fun nature walk through the woods where, in the Adirondacks, you may expect to see a black bear or deer, but instead, there's a freaking 30-foot tall Tyrannosaurus Rex and a Triceratops the size of a dump truck in the woods. It's pretty awesome. I'm pretty sure they also stole the sound effects from the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park, but it really sets a great vibe, and it was super fun. And again, if you like to learn things, lots of amazing information. I want to see these local Adirondack businesses thrive and do well, and that's one of the reasons I decided to do this episode to begin with. So it is a great place to take the family, especially with young kids. And after a full day, it was time to leave the Lake George Expedition Park and go get some, you guessed it, soft serve ice cream. Duh. It's summertime in the ADK. That's what we do. So we went down the street and across from the Great Escape to the popular Martha's Dandy Cream. And they had over a dozen daily flavors of soft serve ice cream, and their sizes are insane. A Donnelly's large ice cream is literally the size of a small at Martha's Dandy Cream. And their large cone was probably 12 inches high. And I'm not exaggerating. Literally a foot high of soft serve ice cream. Almost too much. But who am I to say what's too much ice cream? I mean, let's be honest. Who am I to say that? But here we are, 2 days into the Appleton Adirondack Staycation, and we are just crushing it. But that finished day 2, back to Lake Placid, on to day 3. Day 3, Tuesday, July 12th. 2 great days in a row, and Tuesday was supposed to be the only potentially rainy day of the week. So with this in mind, we stayed locally in Lake Placid, And after enjoying a very nice, lovely breakfast, sitting on our screened-in porch and listening to the rain, it slowly went away and the sun came out. So I told my daughter June, all right, put on your hiking shoes. You and I are going for a hike. We couldn't just sit around and not do something today, right? Something Adirondack-y. It's the staycation. Of course we're going to. So, going with our Adirondack Staycation theme of the week, we went for a hike. And since it was a weekday, I took her up a mountain that she's actually never been up yet. Good old Owl's Head. Now, Owl's Head is closed on the weekends due to disrespectful hikers' parking practices, blocking homeowners' driveways on Owl's Head Road. So the mountain is only open, if you can call it that, on weekdays. And I actually did an episode on this mountain, so you can scroll back in the podcast and find the episode on Owl's Head. But the sun was out and we were off to Owl's Head, where we scaled that fun little peak in no time at all and enjoyed some summit snacks on top. Goldfish, of course. And on the way back down, I had the privilege of running into a couple listeners of this very podcast, which is always fun. Big shout out to Noah and his new bride on their wedding this week in the ADK. Congratulations. Great stuff, and nice meeting both of you, and thank you for submitting your High Peak story for the ebook that I put out. Really appreciate it. So day 3 was a low-key Adirondack day, but we went for a hike and we were able to get into the elements. And then we also stayed on top of the summit for a good 30 minutes, which for anyone who has listened to this podcast for a while knows for me that is an eternity. So that was awesome. That's also why I like doing those small hikes with big summit views. You can just stay up there forever and it wasn't that big of a deal to get up there and you don't have much time to get back to the car. Love it. But day 3 is in the books. Tomorrow, however, tomorrow was a day for me. Onward to day 4. Day 4, Wednesday, July 13th. Now, it wouldn't be an Adirondack vacation for an avid hiker without venturing deep into the high peaks for a day, right? Wednesday was that day for me, and it was time to revisit my arch nemesis. A mountain so ugly only a mother could love it. A mountain so muddy no amount of sunshine can ever dry it. It was time to revisit none other than Cliff and Redfield. Mountains that I've only hiked one single time, and I had a hellish time while doing them. Specifically Cliff, not so much Redfield. Redfield, you're cool. Cliff, however, I will fight you. Now, to this day, one of the highest downloaded podcasts that I've ever put out is my episode entitled Marcy, Skylight Gray, Cliff, and Redfield. So, quick story if you haven't heard it. Back when I first climbed the high peaks, I climbed Marcy, Skylight, and Gray on a nice sunny bluebird day. Actually, it was Gray, Skylight, Marcy. And then I made a spontaneous, in-the-moment decision to tack on Cliff and Redfield while I stood atop of Mount Marcy, which was my final peak of the day. After all, it was only 11:30 in the morning, right? This turned out to be, how should I put this, a rough choice. And you can hear all about it on that episode, Marcy, Skylight, Gray, Cliff, and Redfield. But due to that experience, Cliff Mountain has become a bit of a nemesis of mine, and I often get people commenting to me about Cliff and about that episode. And I felt that it was time to revisit these mountains when I was fresh, both physically and mentally. So today was that day, and the episode chronicling that day is forthcoming. So you'll hear all about that on a future podcast episode. But a quick recap of the day. I started at the usual time, 4:30 a.m. at the Adirondack Lodge, planning to hike in via Avalanche Pass, where I did enjoy a nice, quiet morning at Avalanche Lake and Lake Colden before heading up towards Cliff and Redfield. And it was a quiet Wednesday back in the Lake Colden area, or what I like to refer to as the true heart of the high peaks. But I made my way to Cliff and Redfield's junction, marked by a cairn, and I flipped a stick to determine which mountain that I would climb first. Light side, Redfield. Dark side, Cliff. I chose those because Redfield is light and pure, and Cliff is dark and evil, of course. But you'll have to find out on that podcast episode to see who went first and how that day ended up. But this day was a well-needed day deep in the high peaks, a long solo day, clocking in at 12 and a half hours, car to car. But it was a great day in the high peaks nonetheless, and it was exactly what I needed. But the Appleton Adirondack Staycation continues. On to day 5. The Western Adirondacks is up next. The highlight of the week was up next, and the weather continued to be absolutely flawless. Sunny, blue skies and temperatures in the mid to upper 70s. It was time to finally visit Old Forge for real, instead of just driving through it. Now, Old Forge is a major hub in the western Adirondacks with a unique vibe all its own if you've never been there. The drive between Lake Placid and Old Forge, by the way, is also one of my favorite drives in the world. On a nice sunny summer day, that drive, in my opinion, truly captures the essence of the Adirondack Park, as it goes through lots of little towns and villages that represent the ADK well, with long stretches of forest in between. So we drove from Lake Placid to Saranac Lake, through Tupper Lake, to Long Lake, to Blue Mountain Lake, onto Racket Lake, Inlet, Eagle Bay, and finally the great town of Old Forge. So we planned to kill two birds with one stone on this trip, however, as we set sail from Lake Placid along Route 86 to Route 3 to Route 30 and 28. Isn't it a little confusing how a road can be Route 30 north and Route 28 south at the same time? Though I suppose roads also go in two directions. Anyways, we were off to Old Forge for the night, but first, we had a pit stop planned along the way. We were finally going to hit up a place that I've passed a number of times and I've always wanted to visit. The unbelievably impressive, expectation-shattering Adirondack Experience Museum in Blue Mountain Lake. This place was amazing. I'm not just saying that either, because to be honest, I figured it might be, as many places in the Adirondacks are, a low-key attempt at a museum, but I was horribly mistaken. This place is the real deal, and it is huge, with an entire campus, not just like a building or two. There's full train cars in some exhibits, horse carriages, cars, boats, interactive mining and logging exhibits that my kids loved, and just so much more showcasing the history of this great Adirondack Park and the people who lived here. There's mining sections, logging, trains traveling to the park, snowmobiles, hunting, fishing, Native Americans, boating, cabins. There's a whole Verplank Colvin exhibit, a Noah John Rondo exhibit, aka the mayor of Cold River City, population 1, for all you Northville Placid Trail hikers. There's even a 1932 and 1980 Winter Olympics exhibit. There's lean-tos. There's cabins. There's just so much there. They absolutely crushed it, and they crushed it in a super professional way. Not just like an Adirondack version, but a version of just, this is good. I can't say enough good things about it. It was honestly shocking how great it was. And you would never expect it in Blue Mountain Lake, of all places. We will undoubtedly be going back. And if you're like me and you enjoy history, especially Adirondack history, or you just want a new experience, I highly recommend skip your next High Peaks hiking trip and head to Blue Mountain Lake and hit up the museum for a day. You will not be disappointed. In fact, just go stay in Blue Mountain Lake or one of those surrounding towns for the weekend, and you can also hike Blue Mountain while you're out there if you really need to go hiking. The place is awesome. So after this museum blew our minds, it was time to get to Old Forge. So we hopped back in the car and continued our drive through the park towards Old Forge to our hotel. And after arriving, we checked in, dropped our bags. The girls jumped on the hotel beds, as kids are wont to do. And then we went and grabbed some delicious barbecue at a smokehouse called Mountainside Smokehouse in Old Forge, right near Eagle Bay. They had mountains on their logo and smoked barbecue in their restaurant. Sounds like a place tailor-made for James Appleton. After devouring a large amount of smoked meat, it was time to head back to the hotel to do the only thing young children staying in a hotel want to do. Hit up the hotel pool. We can all remember those feelings. So that was our evening. But the following day, day 6, that would be the big one. We were taking the kids to none other than the Enchanted Forest Water Safari Water Park. This is a stellar water park located in Old Forge. So after we got out of the pool, it was time to call it on day 5, because day 6 was sure to be another long, sunny, flawless summer day in the ADK Park. Better get our rest. Day 6 will be a big one. Day 6, Friday, July 15th. the climax of the Appleton Adirondack Family Staycation. We were taking our daughters to their first ever water park and their second family theme park of the week. What a great week. Enchanted Forest Water Safari, you are up next. This was also the first time my wife or I had been here since we were young kids. So we arrived just as the park opened for the day, along with the rest of the crowd. But since it's Old Forge, the water park can only really fit so many people, and the line to get in was only a few minutes, and then we were off to the races. Now, I feel like the Enchanted Forest could use a facelift in terms of its signs and the look from the road. But let me tell you something, once you get inside, the place once again just blew me away. This place exists here in the Adirondacks? Who knew it was so legit? We had a blast. Seriously, the water park, the slides, the rides, the size of the property, it's enormous. The amenities all far surpassed my expectations once again in just the best way possible. This place was legit. So we entered the park in front of the giant Paul Bunyan statue, and we were ready for some adventure. And from the start, my sweet little shy, quiet 7-year-old daughter June, with her curly red hair, was ready to rage, and she showed a fearless side that can only make a parent very proud, especially a parent who has gotten himself into predicaments in the backcountry due to his own wild side. The child showed absolutely no fear, and she was ready to rage on whatever water ride they had for her, no questions asked. It was great to see. Now, my wife and my 3-year-old, however, spent some time in the kids' pool and the swing, but June and I began our journey tubing down the raging rapids while little Penny, who eventually overcame her own fear in the kiddie pool, she unleashed her wild side by sliding down Walter's wild slide. Then we climbed the wooden stair mountain to the top of the slide that's visible from the road, and it was time to conquer the Shadow. A long tube series that of course twists and turns every which way and ends in the pool below, starting 3 stories up. Now I asked June, "Do you want me to go first?" And she replied, "No way, I'm going first." Fearless. It's truly amazing to see as a parent. So down she went, and then I followed behind. And it was now time to venture north and continue along the trail and gain some elevation as we walked up the big hill to the ride known as the Curse of the Silverback, which was another tube ride filled with twists and turns and waterfalls and, of course, a large silverback gorilla. After all, we are on a safari. Now, the lines moved quickly that day. The park was busy, but it wasn't too busy, not overwhelmingly busy where every ride takes an hour to go on. So it was a great middle ground. And granted, it was technically a weekday, being Friday, but that's okay. So as we scaled to the summit of the Curse of the Silverback, we eyeballed our next adventure as we stood atop of the park. We would head to the Amazon River, where another large tube ride awaited us. Now, the Amazon River was a more medium speed compared to the tube rides that we've been on so far, which for some people might be preferred. But after we completed our trip down the Amazon River, it was time to relax in the first of 2 different lazy rivers that this place has to offer. So the whole family grabbed some tubes and we did many laps floating down the Safari River Expedition Lazy River. Of course, I had to walk in the river holding my 3-year-old on her tube so that she could relax and have fun, but you know, that's what dads are here for, right? Now, we opted to skip Kilimanjaro's Revenge and the Mamba Strike slides due to the line size and the intensity of these rides. Now, I'm talking, they have the type of water slides that just go straight down. I mean, I'm talking just like a vertical drop. So we avoided those. But after a number of laps at the Safari Expedition, it was time to refuel at the Oasis Cafe and then back to the water park adventure. And at this point, we continued north on the trail as we followed our map, heading to the northwest part of the park, where a tidal wave pool and more wet and fun water rides awaited. Now, remember when I said this place is way bigger than I ever anticipated? I'm not kidding. It's huge. And they're building more as we speak. At this point, it was later in the afternoon as we left the safari land and headed into the Adirondack Expedition portion of the park. Now, you didn't expect a water park in the 80K to not also have some 80K themed stuff, did you? Of course not. So we headed over the covered bridge and enjoyed some time floating down the second, but even more fun, lazy river, through the log jam, along the base of the sawmill as the river's current carried us around, back and forth, all the way around. June and I then decided to go check out the Adirondacks Run, Cascade Falls, and the Black River rides. These were all fast, curvy, wet, and often dark tube rides that when the lights go out as you're riding down the slide, in pitch black, hitting turns here and drops there, just thinking to yourself, man, if something goes wrong, there is literally nothing I can do about it. Hopefully we survive. Boom, and then you come out the bottom of the slide into the pool. They were some intense rides, I will be honest with you. These were much more intense. But after this, it was back to the sawmill area with more slides and living that lazy river Adirondack lifestyle that it offered. And by this point in our day, we were all pretty beat and it was time to change into some dry clothes and continue on some dry rides. Oh yeah, the Enchanted Forest Water Safari also has a whole dry section of the park too. This place is great. Now, like with hiking, changing into those dry clothes at a water park, it is just life-changing. And then we took a chairlift ride above the entire theme park. I know you're thinking, a chairlift ride? Does it get much more Adirondack than that? It does not. But June continued pushing her wild side with one more final ride on a scrambler, and she just crushed it. Fortunately for me, I learned my lesson a few days earlier at the Lake George Expedition Park, so I passed on that stomach-turning ride. I guess I've grown too soft. I will have to change that, though. I can't be this soft. I'm going to do it next time. But at this point, it was time to load the car and head back to Lake Placid since we still had a 2-hour drive ahead of us to get back home and hungry bellies. And fortunately, once again, it was a perfect sunny bluebird Adirondack textbook summer day, and the drive between Old Forge and Lake Placid was as pleasant as ever, as the kids immediately fell asleep in the back of the car. And then we arrived back home, fulfilled and impressed with what the Adirondack Park has to offer visitors anywhere you go. Now, I highly recommend checking out Old Forge's Enchanted Water Safari and the Adirondack Experience Museum in Blue Mountain Lake, whether you have a family or you're single. They're both incredible places and incredible assets to the Adirondack Park. But that wraps up our Old Forge trip, Day 5 and Day 6 of the Appleton Adirondack Family Staycation. But it's not over yet. Day 7 and 8, July 16th and 17th. Well, the Appleton Adirondack Family Staycation has been a big success. For me, it wasn't quite over though, as the weekend was still alive and this dry weather is still here. So Day 7 had me fishing in a picturesque backcountry pond on yet another flawless Adirondack day surrounded by blue water, evergreen trees, and good vibes with Josh and my nephew Colden. Yes, Josh's son is named Colden. And another fun fact, both of his daughter's middle names are also the names of high peaks. Very fitting, right, for two 46er parents. So that was Day 7, and then Sunday, Day 8, started off with a sunrise hike with Josh up one of our local favorite mountains, Scarface Mountain, for yet another perfect Adirondack morning. And sadly, tomorrow, I'm back at work. But Day 8 capped it off flawlessly. All in all, this Adirondack staycation was extremely satisfying as we explored areas that we don't often visit here in the park, tried new places that we have wanted to check out, and learned more and more about what this magnificent park we call home has to offer and how it came to be the place that it is. Like anywhere, the Adirondacks isn't perfect and it has its own challenges, but the heart and soul of this rugged wilderness is alive and well. And if you set out on an adventure in this 6 million acre park, you'll be sure to find exactly what you're looking for, no matter what corner of the park you're in. Whether you're in the front country or the back country, adventure awaits you in every corner of the Adirondacks. Thanks for listening to the story of the Appleton's Adirondack Family Staycation. I hope you've all heard about some new places and you're inspired to go check them out for yourself, or maybe to just explore and find some new ADK spots that you have wanted to visit, and here's some motivation to go check those places out. Now is the time. But that's going to do it for this very unique episode here on the 46 of 46 podcast. Enjoy your summer, everybody, and don't miss out. Remember to always leave no trace, do the rock walk, and if you carry it in, carry it out. See you on the trails, everybody.